Go eat outside on the street, you beggar. That's what my son shouted when I tried to sit at his table in the restaurant. I took a slow breath, signaled the waiter, and answered calmly, all right? But in that case, you're the ones who'll have to leave. Even I was surprised at how steady my voice sounded. If you're listening to this, please like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. The entire room at the Golden Crown turned their heads toward us. My son, Ethan, froze, his cheeks burning red with shame. His wife, Lauren, dropped her wine glass onto the white tablecloth. What Ethan didn't know was the truth about me. My name is Margaret. I'm 65 years old, and that evening, everything was about to change. But to explain how I got there, I need to go back a few hours, because what followed those words was something no one, absolutely no one, expected. It started 3 hours earlier when Ethan called. Mom, I want to take you to dinner at the best restaurant in town. I've got something to celebrate, and I want you there. His tone felt strange, almost mocking, but as always, I wanted to believe my son was finally letting me into his shiny, successful world. That night, I got ready with so much care. I pulled out my best dress, an emerald green one I'd bought years ago but rarely wore. I styled my hair carefully, put on a touch of makeup, and even chose my mother's pearl earrings. I wanted to look my best for him. Ethan had built an impressive life. He was a regional manager at a major company, owned a big home in an upscale neighborhood, and his wife, Lauren, was always dressed in designer clothes. With me though, his own mother, he had grown colder, more distant. I arrived at the Golden Crown at exactly 8 p.m. The place gleamed, white tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters in tuxedos. A single dinner here easily ran over $200 a person. I knew the place well, though Ethan didn't know that. When I asked for Ethan Parker's table, the maitre d', Thomas, gave me a quick look up and down. My green dress, though my finest, seemed modest next to the gowns other women wore. Of course, ma'am, please follow me, he said politely. As I walked past the tables, I could feel eyes on me, hear whispers, people probably wondering what a woman like me was doing in such a place. Ethan sat near the center beside Lauren, who wore a glamorous red dress and jewelry that sparkled under the lights. But as I got closer, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There was no chair for me. Hi, son, I said, forcing a smile, hoping he'd stand to greet me or at least explain where I should sit. Ethan only smirked. Oh, Mom, you're here. He stayed seated. No hug, no warmth. Lauren didn't even lift her head. And where's my chair? I asked quietly. Your chair. Ethan chuckled, though it wasn't a kind laugh. It was sharp and cruel. Mom, I didn't invite you here for dinner. I brought you so you could see how successful people live, so you'd understand the difference between you and us. It felt like someone had punched me. People at nearby tables were starting to watch more openly. Son, I don't understand, I whispered, trying to hold on to my dignity. You don't understand? Ethan raised his voice. Look at yourself, Mom. Look at this place. Do you really think you belong here? We come here every week. We spend more on one dinner than you spend in a month. Lauren finally spoke without glancing up from her plate. Ethan, don't be too hard on her. It's not your mom's fault she's, well, the way she is. Her words cut even deeper than my son's. Humiliation burned my eyes with tears I refused to shed. But what they didn't know was that I had a secret, one I had kept for years. And that night, it was about to come out in the most unexpected way. Ethan, please, I begged softly, my voice trembling. I just wanted to spend time with you. We haven't really talked in months. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, as if he was enjoying my pain. Talk? What are we supposed to talk about, Mom? Your boring little life? Sitting in your apartment watching TV? Taking the bus? Buying clothes at bargain stores? People nearby weren't even pretending not to listen anymore. An elegant couple at the next table exchanged looks of pity in my direction. My neck burned hot, but I tried to keep calm. Son, I've worked hard my whole life, I said, clinging to my dignity. I may not have money, but I do have my pride. Lauren laughed lightly, almost dismissively. Pride? Margaret, forgive me, but what exactly do you have to be proud of? You live in a 2-room apartment, you take the bus everywhere, you shop at discount stores. Every word stung like a knife. But what hurt most was the satisfied look on my son's face. How had the sweet boy I raised turned into this cold man? Ethan leaned forward, raising his voice so more people could hear. The truth, Mom, is I'm embarrassed to introduce you as my mother. Look at Lauren, her style, her education, her confidence. That's the kind of woman who belongs with me. Lauren smiled, adjusting her blonde hair. Her red dress looked like it cost at least $1,000, and I recognized the Italian shoes she wore. Oh, I knew them very well. Lauren comes from a great family, Ethan went on proudly. Her father owns 3 car dealerships. She studied at a private university, speaks 3 languages, and knows business. And you? What do you have to teach me? How to scrape by on $200 a week. My tears threatened to spill, but I held them back. Because what neither of them knew, what no one in my family knew, was that their entire world was about to shift that very night. The waiter, Thomas, approached quietly. I had known him for years, though he couldn't reveal that. His eyes were full of concern as he asked politely, "Would you like to order anything else?" "No," Ethan snapped. "My mother won't be eating with us. In fact, I think it's time she left." "But son," I whispered, "I thought you said you wanted to celebrate something with me." Ethan laughed cruelly. "Celebrate with you? Mom, what I'm celebrating is my promotion, my new position, my successful life. You think I'd share that with someone who just reminds me of where I came from? Lauren and we're on a whole different level than you." "Ethan is right," Lauren added, taking a slow sip of her wine, one that cost at least $100 a bottle. "We come to places like this because we can. We've got the money, the education, and the social standing to belong here. It's nothing personal, Margaret, but there are differences that can't be ignored." I looked around the restaurant. It was stunning. Soft light spilling from crystal chandeliers, original artwork hanging on the walls, and the sound of live piano filling the room. Every single detail was chosen to create elegance. "This really is a beautiful place," I murmured. "Of course it is," Ethan shot back smugly. "It's the most expensive restaurant in the entire city. People wait 3 months for a table here. But when you've got money and connections like us, doors open." Lauren nodded proudly. "We know the manager, the chef, even the owner." "Well, Ethan knows the owner personally, that's why we always get the best table." A small smile tugged at my lips. If only she knew who really knew the owner. "Why are you smiling, Mom?" Ethan asked, narrowing his eyes. "Do you think it's funny that I'm teaching you how the real world works?" "No, son," I answered evenly. "I was just thinking about something." "About what?" he demanded. "About how you're right about one thing. There are differences. Big ones. But they're not the differences you think. Tonight, you'll see what I mean." Ethan and Lauren exchanged a quick, uneasy glance. My tone no longer sounded like the timid, apologetic mother they were used to. "What do you mean?" Lauren asked carefully. Before I could answer, another man approached the table. It was Michael, the restaurant manager, a refined gentleman in his 50s with an impeccable suit. "Good evening," he greeted politely. "Is everything all right here?" Ethan straightened up, clearly pleased by the attention. "Everything's perfect, Michael. As always, your staff is excellent." Michael smiled, but when his eyes landed on me, I noticed a flicker of recognition. Of course he knew me. "I'm glad to hear that," he said smoothly, then addressed me directly. "Ma'am, are you enjoying your evening?" It sounded casual, but I could feel the weight in his words. He was waiting for me. "Yes, Michael," I said firmly. "But I think it's time you spoke with the owner. There's a situation here that requires his attention." He nodded slowly, almost as if he had been waiting for that all night. "Of course, ma'am. I'll bring him right away." Ethan frowned, confused. "The owner? What are you talking about?" "Mom, do you actually know the manager of this place?" Lauren's eyes widened. "Margaret, how do you know Michael?" I only smiled and stayed quiet. The moment was close. Ethan, growing impatient, tried to brush it off. "Michael, my mom's been confused lately. Sometimes she says things that don't make sense. You know, her age." Michael kept his professional smile, but didn't reply. His silence made the air at the table heavy. "Well, Why aren't you answering? Ethan pressed. Do you really know my mother, young Mr. Parker? Michael replied carefully. I think it's best if we wait for the owner. He can clear up any confusion. Lauren leaned toward Ethan, whispering, but loud enough for me to hear. This is really strange. Your mother's acting odd. Are you sure she's okay? Instead of hurting me, her words only strengthened me. She had no idea how wrong she was. By now, nearby tables had gone quiet. Diners paused mid-bite, pretending not to stare. Even the soft piano music seemed to fade under the weight of the moment. Mom, this is ridiculous, Ethan snapped. I don't know what game you're playing, but it's over. Lauren and I just want to enjoy our dinner. In peace? I repeated, my voice sharp but steady. The same peace you've given me all these years? The peace of being treated like a stranger by my own son. Enough. Ethan slammed his hand on the table, glasses rattling as heads turned. You're making a scene. You're embarrassing me in front of all these important people. Lauren laid her hand on his arm, whispering, Calm down, honey, people are watching. Exactly. Ethan barked, pushing to his feet, his face red. Mom, I'm asking you to leave. Right now. You're ruining my night, my celebration, my reputation. I stayed seated, calm as ever. Your reputation? The reputation of a man who treats his mother like garbage. You're not garbage, he shot back, but his voice betrayed him. You're just different from us. You belong in another world, a world of ordinary people with no ambition. People who settle for scraps. The words rang through the restaurant. Silence spread as even the waiters stopped moving. Lauren rose too. Margaret, please. Ethan is right. This just isn't your place. Look around. People are staring at you with pity. But she was wrong. People weren't staring with pity. They were staring with curiosity, expectation. They could sense something big was about to happen. Do you even know how much this meal costs? Ethan sneered, pointing at the table. $300, just for what we've eaten so far. More than you spend on food in a whole month. And do you know how much this wine costs? $250 a bottle, I answered smoothly. Dom Perignon, 2015. Excellent choice. Ethan blinked. How do you know that? Because I know this place very well, son. Better than you think. Lauren scoffed. You? You know this place? From what? Pressing your nose against the menu outside. A few nervous chuckles rippled around the room, but I wasn't rattled. At that moment, a distinguished man in his 60s walked toward us, his gray suit perfectly cut, his presence commanding. Michael followed just a step behind him. Ethan's expression shifted instantly to awe. Mr. Harris, he exclaimed with a wide, eager smile. What an honor. I'm Ethan Parker. We met briefly at the business conference last month. Mr. Harris gave a polite nod. Yes, I recall, he said, though his eyes were locked on me. Good evening, Margaret. The way he said my name made Ethan freeze. This wasn't the greeting of a powerful businessman to a random old woman. This was the greeting of someone who knew me very, very well. Good evening, Harris, I replied naturally. I'm so sorry you had to come down here for this, Lauren whispered to Ethan, looking completely lost. How does your mother even know Mr. Harris? Ethan stammered. I don't know. Mom, how do you know Mr. Harris? When Harris stepped up to our table, the entire restaurant seemed to fall into silence. Mrs. Parker, he addressed me formally. Is there an issue I need to handle? The way he called me Mrs. Parker made Ethan's brow crease with confusion. Why would a man of his status speak to me with such respect? Yes, I said clearly. There is a problem. My son and his wife have disrespected me in the worst way, publicly humiliating me here in your restaurant, telling me I don't belong, and asking me to leave. Harris nodded gravely. I see. And what would you like me to do about it? Wait, Mr. Harris. Ethan cut in desperately. This is a misunderstanding. My mother is exaggerating. I was just explaining to her that this place is, well, a little too sophisticated for her. Harris turned to him with a cold look. Too sophisticated? For your own mother? Are you telling me she doesn't belong here? That's not it, Ethan protested. It's just, she can't afford a dinner here. She lives on $200 a week. This isn't within her means. Lauren nodded quickly. Exactly. We weren't being cruel, just realistic. This restaurant costs a fortune. Harris turned back to me. Is that true, Margaret? That you can't afford to dine here? A slow smile spread across my face. Finally, the moment I had been waiting for. The moment my son would see who I really was. Well, Harris, I said, standing tall. That depends on how you look at it. From my purse, I pulled out an envelope I had been carrying for months, saving it for just this kind of night. I laid it right in front of Ethan. What's that? Lauren asked suspiciously. Open it, I told Ethan. Read it out loud. His hands shook as he slid the papers from the envelope. Lauren leaned over his shoulder to see. As Ethan's eyes scanned the words, his face drained of color. No, this can't be. What does it say? Lauren pressed. What can't be? Ethan's voice cracked as he read. Certificate of ownership. The Golden Crown Restaurant. Owner, Margaret Parker. Date of acquisition, March 15, 2018. His words trailed off into a whisper. Gasps rippled through the room. Diners stopped pretending not to listen. Some even leaned forward in their seats to watch. Lauren snatched the documents from Ethan's hands. This has to be fake. A joke. Margaret, tell me this is fake. But Harris cleared his throat. I assure you, Mrs. Parker's documents are very real. She is the rightful owner of this restaurant, and 4 more across the city. 4 more? Ethan's voice shook. Mom, this is impossible. You live in a tiny apartment. You take the bus. You shop at bargain stores. I sat down slowly, feeling stronger than I had in years. Yes, son. I live simply because I choose to. That doesn't mean I don't have money. How much money? Lauren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Harris answered for me. Mrs. Parker's net worth is approximately $8 million. Her restaurants bring in nearly $2 million in profit each year. Ethan collapsed back into his chair as if the words themselves had struck him. $8 million, he whispered. Why? Lauren murmured, shaking her head. Why didn't you ever tell us? I leaned back, watching their stunned faces. Because I wanted to know people's true character. I wanted to know if you'd love me for who I am, not for what I own. But Mom, Ethan stammered, I'm your son. How could you hide this from me? How could I hide it? I repeated, my voice rising with the anger I had buried for years. Are you really asking me that, after everything you've said to me tonight? I stood again, taller this time, no longer the meek, invisible old woman. No, I stood as what I truly was, a successful businesswoman who had built her empire with her own hands. For 5 years now, ever since you started climbing at work, you've treated me like I was nothing. You've made me feel ashamed of how I look, how I dress, how I live. People around us began whispering, some pulling out their phones to record. Do you remember last Christmas? I continued. When you told me not to come to your party because I wouldn't fit in with your important guests? Ethan shrank in his chair. Or Lauren's birthday 6 months ago, when you said my clothes weren't good enough for the dress code? Lauren looked down, avoiding my eyes. All this time you assumed I was poor, that I was a burden, that I was someone to be embarrassed by. And tonight, you confirmed exactly what I already knew. At that moment, Michael, the manager, leaned in discreetly. Mrs. Parker, would you like us to escort them out? Before I could reply, Ethan jumped up. Wait, Mom. If you have so much money, why live the way you do? Why keep it a secret? We're family. Family? I laughed bitterly. 15 minutes ago, you told me to eat on the street like a beggar. Is that what family does? Lauren tried to interject. Margaret, if we had only known. If you had known what? I cut her off. That I was wealthy? Then suddenly I deserve respect? That's your idea of family love? Respect only when there's money involved. A low murmur of approval rose from the other diners. Some even nodded in agreement. Mom, please, Ethan begged. We can talk about this privately, at home. Privately. I pointed around the room. Like when you humiliated me here, in public. Like when you told everyone I didn't belong. Harris stepped closer. Mrs. Parker, as general manager of your businesses, I need to ask, should we take action? Mr. Harris, please, Ethan pleaded, turning to him. She's my mother. There has to be a way to work this out. But Harris's voice was cold. Young man, you just spent half an hour insulting and humiliating the owner of this restaurant, your own mother, in front of dozens of witnesses. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. We didn't know. If we had known she was the owner, we never would have. Never would have what? I snapped. Never would have disrespected me? You only respect people with money? Is that really who you are? At that, a well-dressed man at a nearby table began to clap slowly. Within seconds, others joined in, applause spreading across the restaurant like a wave. The applause wasn't mocking, it was real. People were clapping out of admiration. Admiration for the way I had stood my ground, for the dignity I showed, for refusing to be broken. Ethan finally seemed to notice the entire restaurant was watching us. Mom, people are staring. Yes, I said firmly. They are. They're seeing exactly who you are. They're watching how you treat your own mother when you think she has nothing. But now I know the truth, Ethan pleaded. Now that I know you have money, we can start over. Start over. I let out a bitter laugh. Now that I'm rich enough in your eyes, I suddenly qualify as your mother again? Lauren, tears streaking her cheeks, reached for my hand. Margaret, please forgive us. We didn't know. I pulled my hand away sharply. Lauren, an hour ago you told me Ethan was ashamed to introduce me as his mother. You told me I didn't have the education, the class, or the money to be here. Remember? She nodded miserably. Well, you were right about one thing, I said. There are differences between us. Just not the ones you imagined. I stepped to the center of the restaurant so every diner could hear me clearly. For the first time in years, my voice carried with authority. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, addressing the entire room, I'm sorry to interrupt your evening, but since you've all witnessed what happened here, you deserve the full truth. The restaurant went completely silent. Even the waiters froze in place. Ethan made a move to rise, but Mr. Harris pressed a firm hand on his shoulder, keeping him in his seat. My name is Margaret Parker, I continued. I am the owner of this restaurant. For the past 7 years, I've come here quietly and often, always watching, learning, making sure my staff treat our customers well. Several diners nodded, recognition dawning. They remembered the older woman who sometimes sat in the corner, always ordering the same dish, always leaving generous tips. But tonight, I went on, I was invited here by my own son. And here, in my own restaurant, he humiliated me, insulted me, and told me I didn't belong. A ripple of disapproval swept through the room. Faces shifted, some shocked, some outraged. Mom, stop, Ethan blurted, jumping to his feet. You're ruining my reputation. Your reputation? I turned to him with a cold smile. You ruined it yourself the moment you treated your own mother like trash in front of all these people. Lauren tried one last time. Margaret, please. Understand. We had no way of knowing. That I had money? I cut her off. That's your excuse? You thought it was fine to disrespect me as long as you believed I was poor. From one of the tables, an elegant woman spoke up loudly. Exactly. Respect doesn't depend on wealth, it's about basic decency. Others chimed in agreement. The atmosphere shifted. The elegant dining hall had turned into a stage for a public reckoning. I faced Ethan and Lauren again. Now that the truth is out, let me explain how things will change. Mom, please, Ethan begged. Let's talk about this in private. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Why not here? I replied, my voice sharp. You had no problem humiliating me in public. So you'll listen to me here, in public. Michael stepped forward and offered me a chair, placing it like a throne in the center. I sat with calm authority, finally owning the respect I had long deserved. Ethan, I began, for the past 5 years, since you started making money, you've changed. You've become arrogant, dismissive. You've forgotten where you came from. Mom, don't interrupt me. My voice cracked through the silence. Tonight, you will listen. Ethan slumped back, defeated. Do you remember when you were 12 and nearly died of pneumonia? I asked. Do you remember how we had no health insurance, how I worked 3 jobs for months just to pay for your treatment? My voice faltered for a moment as I relived it. I worked in an office by day, scrubbed buildings at night, and waited tables on weekends. I slept 3 hours a night to keep you alive. The restaurant was silent, save for a few muffled sobs. Some older women dabbed their eyes. And do you know why I did it? I asked, locking eyes with my son. Because I loved you. Not because you had money. Not because you could give me anything. Because a mother's love is unconditional. Lauren broke down again, this time with tears of shame rather than self-pity. But you, Ethan, I continued, my voice stronger now, your love for me turned out to be conditional. You love me only when I fit into your polished little world. Only when I don't embarrass you. From the back, an older gentleman stood and called out, That's right, ma'am. Tell them the truth. The applause that followed gave me even more strength. Now, I said, let me tell you how I built my life. Because it wasn't luck. It wasn't inheritance. Ethan's eyes lifted, curiosity flickering even through his shame. After your father died, when you were 15, I was left alone with debts and a son to raise. I could have given up. But I chose to fight. I worked as a waitress in a small diner. I studied everything, the kitchen, the finances, the customers. And after 5 years, I scraped together enough for a loan and bought my first restaurant. It was tiny, in a run-down neighborhood. But I made it a success. Lauren whispered, That's why you know so much about this business. Exactly, I said, turning to her. Because I built this empire from the ground up. Every restaurant I own came from sweat, grit, and sleepless nights. Mom, I didn't know, Ethan muttered, his voice breaking. You didn't know, I snapped, because you never asked. You never cared about my life. All you cared about was that I didn't embarrass you. Mr. Harris stepped closer. Mrs. Parker, he said quietly, shall we proceed? Ethan's head shot up. Proceed? Proceed with what? I turned to him with a cool, sharp smile. The expulsion procedure. As the owner of this restaurant, I have the right to deny entry to anyone who disrespects my staff or my guests, I declared firmly. You can't do that. Lauren cried. We're family. Family. I laughed coldly. An hour ago, you told me I wasn't good enough to be in your family. But now that you know I have money, suddenly I'm family again. Applause broke out across several tables. Diners leaned forward, savoring the justice unfolding before their eyes. Ethan shot up from his chair, desperation etched all over his face. Mom, please, please forgive us. We can change. We can do better. You can change. I repeated slowly. You can be better? Ethan, the problem isn't whether you can change. The problem is you only want to change now that you've discovered I have money. I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. Tell me something, son. If right now I told you this was all a joke, that I had no money at all, how would you treat me? Would you still ask me to leave? Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His silence was louder than any answer. He had just confessed without saying a word. Your silence says it all, I whispered, sadness mixing with relief. You know me better than I thought. Lauren tried one last desperate plea. Margaret, we can really change. Ethan's been under so much pressure at work. He hasn't been himself. Pressure at work? I snapped, turning to her. Is that your excuse? Humiliating an elderly woman? Humiliating your husband's mother? A man stood up from a nearby table. Ma'am, with respect, I know Ethan from work. And I can confirm he talks about you exactly the way he treated you tonight. Always calling you my poor mother or the burden I have to support. Ethan's face turned ghostly pale. Mr. Thompson, I never. That was out of context. Mr. Thompson shook his head, laughing bitterly. Ethan, last month at the executive meeting you said, and I quote, my mother is a simple woman who doesn't understand my lifestyle. Honestly, it's embarrassing to explain why she can't come to important events. Gasps filled the restaurant. Murmurs of disgust rippled across the room. Ethan tried to argue, But it was useless. The truth had already been exposed. You see, Ethan, I said calmly, this isn't about tonight. It's about who you've become. About the shame you feel for your own mother. I walked slowly toward the tall windows overlooking the city lights. Do you see that city? I started at the bottom, in the poorest neighborhoods. I washed dishes, I scrubbed tables, I served people who treated me like dirt. But through it all, I kept my dignity. I turned back toward him. And yet, my own son has made me feel more humiliated than any stranger ever has. Lauren sobbed harder. Margaret, please. We can go to family therapy. We can fix this. Family therapy? I laughed bitterly. Do you really think a few sessions can undo years of contempt and humiliation? Michael, the manager, approached quietly. Mrs. Parker, forgive me for interrupting, but there are reporters outside. It seems someone posted the story online. Do you want me to hold them back? Ethan bolted upright. Reporters? No, this will ruin my career. My boss will find out. Everyone at the company will know. Now you're worried about your career? I said firmly. You weren't worried when you screamed at me in front of this entire restaurant. It's different, he shouted. That was private family business. Private. I gestured around the crowded dining room. You humiliated me in public, and now you dare to call it private? Mr. Thompson spoke again, his tone sharp. Ethan, several of our co-workers are here tonight. Word has already reached the office. HR will hear about this. Ethan collapsed back into his chair as though struck. No, it can't be. My career, my reputation. Your reputation, I said slowly, was ruined the moment you decided to treat your mother like trash. Lauren reached for his hand, but he shoved her away. This is your fault, he screamed at her. You're the one who convinced me she was a burden. You told me to be ashamed of her. My fault. Lauren shot back, standing indignantly. You were the one always complaining. I just agreed with you. And there it was, the truth. They hadn't just humiliated me tonight. They had been tearing me down for years, feeding each other's contempt. Enough, I thundered. Enough blame. You are both guilty. I turned to Mr. Harris. Bring the documents. Documents? Ethan asked, his voice shaking with fear. Harris disappeared briefly, then returned with a thick folder. He opened it and spread papers across the table. These, I said solemnly, prove I own not just this restaurant, but 5 across the city. Lauren gasped. 5. Yes, 5. Including the secret garden, where you celebrated your anniversary last year. Including Ocean View, where Ethan entertained clients last month. Including the Gilded Terrace, where Lauren celebrated her birthday. Ethan's eyes widened. You own all of them? That's right, I said coolly. And every time you sat in those restaurants, bragging about your success, your status, your money, you were lining my pockets. Laughter bubbled up among the diners, delighted at the irony. But there's more. I pulled another paper from the folder. This is my will. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a fork hit the floor. In this will, I said clearly, I left everything, $8 million, 5 restaurants, and real estate properties, to my only son, Ethan Parker. Ethan's eyes widened. Left? Why do you say left? I smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of justice long overdue. Because after tonight, after the way you've treated me, that will is going to change. No! Ethan shouted, springing up so fast his chair toppled to the floor. Mom, please, Ethan begged. I'm your only son. I'm your family. My family. I laughed bitterly. An hour ago, you told me to eat out on the street like a beggar. That's how you treat family. Lauren stood too, panic in her eyes. Margaret, please think about this. Ethan made a mistake, but he's still your son. Blood is more important than anything. Blood is more important than anything? I repeated, my voice sharp. Then why has my own blood treated me worse than any stranger? I turned to the entire room. Ladies and gentlemen, you've all witnessed what happened tonight. You saw how my son treated me. How he humiliated me. How he showed nothing but shame for me. Heads nodded across the room, diners meeting my gaze with approval. Well then, I said firmly, you will also witness the consequences. I pulled my phone from my purse and dialed a number Ethan didn't recognize. Good evening, Mr. Lewis. Yes, this is Margaret Parker. Please come to the Golden Crown immediately with the documents we prepared last week. Yes, it's urgent. Bring the new will. Ethan froze. New will? You already prepared a new will. I ended the call and looked straight into his eyes. Ethan, did you really think tonight was the first time you humiliated me? Did you think I hadn't noticed how you've treated me for years? Lauren jumped in, desperate. But Margaret, don't you think this is too drastic? He's your only son. Drastic. I turned on her, fury simmering in my chest. For 5 years your husband has shut me out of his life. He's treated me like an outsider in my own family. I stepped into the center of the restaurant, raising my voice so everyone could hear. Do you want to know why I lived simply, despite having money? Why I wore plain clothes, took the bus, and lived in a small apartment? The diners leaned in, the air heavy with anticipation. Because I wanted to test something. I wanted to know if the people who claimed to love me actually loved me, for who I am, not for what I have. A murmur of understanding swept the room. People were beginning to realize the truth behind my choice. For 7 years, I continued, I lived like an ordinary retiree. And do you know what I discovered? Ethan's face paled as if he already knew the answer. I discovered that my own son was ashamed of me, that he saw me as a burden, that he would rather erase me from his life than admit to his rich friends that his mother didn't fit their image. Tears stung my eyes, though my voice stayed steady. Do you know what it feels like when your own son asks you not to come to his wedding because you don't fit the level of the event? Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Some older women covered their hearts with trembling hands. Mom, I never said that. Exactly, Ethan stammered. Didn't you? I pulled up a message on my phone. Here. April 15th, 2023. Mom, Lauren and I decided to have a small wedding, just close family and important friends. I think it would be better if you didn't come. The venue is very elegant, and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I read the words aloud, my voice echoing through the restaurant. The reaction was instant. Indignation, gasps, even applause from some tables. That doesn't say you couldn't come, Ethan protested weakly. Doesn't it? I pressed on. Listen to the next line. Most of the guests are my colleagues and important clients. I need to maintain a certain professional image. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Lauren looked ashamed. Maintain a professional image, I repeated slowly. Which really means, your mother would ruin your image. An elderly man stood from the back. Ma'am, my mother always said ungrateful children are a woman's worst curse. Applause erupted again, filling the restaurant with righteous approval. Ethan's eyes darted around, panic setting in as he saw everyone's judgment aimed at him. Mom, please. Let's go home. We can talk about this in private. Home. I laughed coldly. Which home, Ethan? My modest apartment you despise, or your mansion in the exclusive neighborhood where I've never once been welcome? Lauren tried again. Margaret, you've always been welcome at our home. Welcome. I raised my phone again. Then explain these messages. Lauren's face drained of color. No, please. I ignored her. December 8th, 2024, Margaret, we're hosting Christmas dinner with friends. Better if you come another day when we can give you more time. March 22nd, 2024, we have important guests this weekend. Could you visit during the week instead? Every message brought fresh murmurs of outrage from the surrounding tables. Do you see the pattern? I asked the diners. There was always an excuse. Always a reason why I wasn't allowed when there were important people around. Ethan sank into his chair, broken. Mom, we thought you preferred. Preferred what? I cut him off. To be alone? To be excluded from my only son's life. At that moment, the doors opened. A distinguished man in his 60s stepped inside, carrying a leather briefcase. My lawyer, Mr. Lewis. Good evening, Mrs. Parker, he greeted formally. I brought the documents you requested. Ethan jumped up, terrified. What documents? Mom, please, don't do anything you'll regret. Regret? I gave him a cold smile. The only regret I have is not doing this sooner. Mr. Lewis opened his briefcase and laid the papers out. Here is the new will we prepared last week, as well as the property transfer documents. Property transfer? Lauren whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, I said calmly. I've decided to leave my fortune to charities that support abandoned seniors, and to loyal employees who have shown me more kindness than my own son. At that, Thomas, the waiter who had been serving us all night, approached timidly. Mrs. Parker, are you sure you want to do this here, in front of everyone? I smiled warmly at him. Thomas, for 5 years you've been kinder to me than my own son. You've treated me with respect no matter how I was dressed, no matter what you thought I had. Thomas flushed. You've always been a very elegant lady, Mrs. Parker. And you leave the best tips. Tips? Ethan looked at me, completely bewildered. Thomas spoke up gently. Your mother always leaves $100 tips, young man. And she always asks about our families, about our struggles. She is the kindest, most generous customer we have. Ethan's mouth fell open, but no words came. This was yet another truth he had never expected. That's right, I said firmly. All these years, while you thought I was scraping by on $200 a week, I was helping my employees, donating to charities, supporting families in need. Lauren whispered through her tears, How much have you donated? In the past 5 years, I replied clearly, about $1 million to different causes. Money I could have spent living in luxury, but instead, I chose to help others. The restaurant burst into applause, spontaneous and sincere. While you were ashamed of my so-called poverty, I continued, I was using my wealth to do good. While you excluded me for not being sophisticated enough, I was practicing generosity you've never even attempted. Ethan shot to his feet, panic in his eyes. Mom, all that is fine, but I'm your son. I'm your only family. You can't just leave everything to strangers. Strangers? I laughed coldly. Ethan, Thomas knows me better than you do. Michael respects me more than you do. My employees have shown me more love in 5 years than my own son has. I turned to Mr. Lewis. Please prepare the documents. I want to sign the new will tonight. No. Ethan lunged toward the table, but Michael and 2 waiters stopped him firmly. You can't do this. I'm your son, I have rights. Mrs. Parker has every right to decide what to do with her fortune, Michael said evenly. This is madness. Lauren sobbed, breaking down. Margaret, Ethan made a mistake, but he doesn't deserve to lose everything. I spun to face her. A mistake? You call 5 years of exclusion, humiliation, and contempt a mistake. Mr. Lewis laid the papers out on the main table. Mrs. Parker, before proceeding, I must ask, are you absolutely sure? Once you sign, these documents will be legally binding. I didn't hesitate. Sir, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Ethan strained against the men holding him back. Mom, wait. Please, give me a chance to explain. A chance to change. A chance. I repeated, incredulous. You've had 5 years of chances. Every event you shut me out of was a chance. Every time you were ashamed of me was a chance. Lauren staggered forward. Margaret, please think rationally. If you take away Ethan's inheritance, you're punishing your future grandchildren too. A sad smile touched my lips. Future grandchildren? Lauren, you've been married 3 years. How many times have you ever included me in conversations about children? How many times have you made me feel welcome as a grandmother? She looked away, unable to answer. The truth is, I said coldly, you never wanted me in their lives. Not me, the poor, uneducated grandmother who didn't fit your image. A murmur of understanding swept through the room. Mr. Lewis straightened the papers. Mrs. Parker, here it is, the new will. Your fortune will be divided among 5 charities and 10 loyal employees. Ethan's voice cracked as he begged, Mom, please, leave me something. Not everything, but something. A chance to prove I can change. I paused, pen in hand. A small part? So you can keep living comfortably without learning a single lesson. No. Ethan pleaded. So I can prove I've changed. So I can earn you back. Lauren stepped forward, her face streaked with tears. Margaret, set conditions. Make him earn it. Don't cut him off completely. Give him a chance. I studied my son. For the first time in years, the arrogance was gone. He looked broken, raw, vulnerable. Conditions, I said slowly. What kind of conditions? Whatever you want, Mom, Ethan said quickly. Anything. I'll do whatever it takes. Mr. Lewis glanced at me. Mrs. Parker, we can set up a conditional will, if that's what you prefer. I circled the table slowly, the silence in the restaurant thick with anticipation. Finally, I stopped and faced my son. Very well. If you truly want a chance, Ethan, here are my conditions. Yes, anything, he said desperately. First condition, I announced loudly enough for the whole restaurant to hear. For the next year, you and Lauren will volunteer every weekend at a nursing home. No excuses. Lauren gasped. Every weekend? But I accept. Ethan cut her off. What else? Second condition. You'll move out of your mansion and live on a budget of $1,500 a month, the very budget you thought I had. Ethan went pale. But Mom, our mortgage, our bills. What, Ethan? I shot back. You can't live on what you thought was good enough for your mother? Nervous laughter rippled through the diners. Third condition, I continued. You'll work part-time in one of my restaurants, as a waiter. You'll learn what it means to serve others and treat every customer with dignity. As a waiter? Lauren said in horror. But Ethan is an executive. Exactly, I replied coldly. And it's time he learned humility. Ethan drew a shaky breath. I accept. What else? Fourth condition. You will write 2 public letters of apology. One to the local newspaper, apologizing for your disrespect toward the elderly. And one to your company, accepting responsibility for your lack of family values. The color drained from Ethan's face. Mom, that would destroy my career. Your career. I laughed bitterly. After tonight, your career is already in ruins. This may be the only chance you have to save it, with dignity. Mr. Thompson, his colleague, rose from his table. She's right, Ethan. The company is already considering suspension. What we've seen tonight violates everything we stand for. Ethan turned to him, panicked. Mr. Thompson, please. I'm sorry, Thompson replied firmly. But respect and integrity are non-negotiable. I looked back at my son. You see, Ethan? Your career is already hanging by a thread. These conditions may be the only way to redeem yourself. Ethan swallowed hard. And the 5th condition? The most important one, I said solemnly. For 1 full year, you and Lauren will visit me every week. Not because I have money. Not because of inheritance. But because I am your mother. You'll spend time with me, I told Ethan. Not for money, but to know me as a person. Lauren muttered. That doesn't sound so hard. When was the last time you asked about my dreams or fears? I asked. She had no answer. Here's the 6th condition, I added. If, during this year, you fail or fake it, everything goes to charity. Mr. Lewis confirmed it was legal. Ethan, terrified but desperate, nodded. I accept. I'll do it all. Good, I said. But remember, what you did tonight can't be erased. Show me change, don't just say sorry. The lawyer prepared the conditional will. The restaurant erupted in applause, people standing in respect. 6 months later, I sat in the Golden Crown again, this time calm, watching Ethan serve tables in uniform. His arrogance was gone, humility had finally appeared in his eyes. Good evening, Mrs. Parker, he smiled, sounding sincere. I asked about his day. Rough, he admitted. I was yelled at, ignored, humiliated. Is that how I made you feel all those years? Progress at last. And Lauren? I asked. She's adjusting. She met an old woman in the nursing home, abandoned by her children. It hit her. She realized that's who you could have become if we kept treating you the way we did. I felt a warmth in my chest. For once, Lauren understood. Michael, the manager, came by. Mrs. Parker, Ethan's an excellent worker. always respectful. After he left, I asked Ethan directly, "Are you only doing this for the inheritance?" He was quiet, then admitted, "At first, yes. But working here changed me. Hearing how much people respect you, I realized I'd lived in a bubble. I treated Thomas like he was nobody, but he's a father working hard for his kids. You even paid for his surgery. I never knew. I was blind, Mom. I studied him carefully. And your career? Do you regret losing it?" He shook his head and laughed softly. "No. That success was fake. I was living for appearances, not for who I truly was." Just then, Lauren walked in, without her jewels or expensive dresses. Lauren entered quietly, dressed simply, her posture softer, more real. "Hello, Margaret," she said, and for the first time in years her voice sounded genuine. "How was the nursing home?" I asked. "Emotional," she replied. "Teresa taught me to knit, told me stories from the war. Their wisdom is incredible." I noticed Ethan looking at her with new respect. The changes had strengthened their marriage too. "Margaret," Lauren continued, "I want to apologize, not just for that night, but for years of excluding you, pushing Ethan to be ashamed of you, judging you only by money." "And now that you know I'm wealthy?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "I feel like a fool." "These months taught me real wealth isn't in a bank account." Ethan nodded. "Mom, we've learned that too." I placed an envelope on the table. "It's an evaluation," I explained. "For 6 months I've been observing you, talking to your supervisors, co-workers, even neighbors." Lauren paled. "An evaluation of what?" "To see if your change was real or just for the inheritance." I read aloud, reports from the nursing home praising Lauren's extra hours and emotional connection, Michael's report describing Ethan as respectful and hardworking, neighbors noting humility and kindness. "What's your conclusion?" Lauren asked, trembling. "That you've learned a lot," I said. "Not fully. 6 months can't erase 5 years, but you've shown change is possible." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Does that mean?" "It means we continue," I said. "But with changes." "You'll keep working here, Ethan, now with fair pay and a chance to learn the business. If you prove yourself, you may earn a management role. You'll move to a larger but modest apartment. And we will start spending real time together as a family." Lauren cried tears of relief. Ethan took my hand. "Even if you never leave me a cent, these months have been the most valuable of my life. I've discovered who I want to be." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "That's all I ever wanted to hear." I stood, looking around the restaurant where everything had changed 6 months ago. "That night I thought I'd lost my son. Now I see he was only hidden under arrogance." Ethan rose too. "Mom, can I hug you now?" I smiled. "Yes, you've earned it." When Ethan hugged me, I felt the love of a son who finally valued his mother for who she was, not for her money. Lauren joined us, and for the first time in years, I truly felt like I had a family. Around us, some of the diners from that terrible night smiled and nodded in quiet approval. "You know the most ironic part of all this?" I asked Ethan. "What?" "That by losing your arrogance and obsession with money, you finally became someone truly worthy of an inheritance." He smiled, different this time. Not proud, not arrogant. It was the smile of a man who had discovered something more valuable than wealth, his own humanity. And I, Margaret Parker, found something I thought was gone forever. I found my son. Because real wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in respect, in genuine love, in seeing the worth of every human being, no matter what they own. That night, as we left the Golden Crown together, not as broken individuals but as a family, I knew I had made the right choice. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments.